Anyone who has eaten a hickory nut will tell you it is like no other. Irresistibly nutty in flavor, crisp and toothsome in texture, the uniquely delicious nut of the shagbark hickory has found many an ardent follower. We have made this documentary to assist the growing demand for these nuts and to show techniques for their foraging, storing, cracking, and marketing. This is made possible through the expertise of Audrey and Robert Biersack of Columbus, Wisconsin, who have honed every step of this process to share with you. Our documentary shares tips and culinary applications developed to get the most cost-effective use of these delicacies. The recipes demonstrated here were developed by Odessa Piper at La Toile Restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin. In addition to other successful nut vendors, the Biersacks have marketed their nuts directly for many years at the Dane County Farmers Market in Madison, Wisconsin. Sales of shucked nuts typically range from 4 ounces to 1 pound. Demand is also great for shucked hickory nuts in larger quantities by chefs and retailers who have been fortunate enough to discover them. Can you just tell us a little bit of the background that you have with the hickory nuts?
It goes back a long time. When I was a kid on the farm, we had some hickory trees, and when I'd bring the cattle up at night for milking, I'd always pick up a few hickory nuts. And I always had a few of them in the shed, and every so often I'd crack a few hickory nuts, and God, they were very, very tasty. So it's kind of been with me ever since I was a kid, and I've continued through life gathering hickory nuts.
Coming over and picking where you're picking, Audrey. I don't know when.
Well, like I said, this tree, you find that there'll be trees there'll be many more nuts, because I think the squirrels, this is one of their favorite trees. And
well, so there's a lot here.
Oh, we gotta go where there is a lot.
Because time's nuts, right?
These are nice nuts, though.
They are.
One of the things about gathering in the fall in Wisconsin is to get out in the wooded area, and the fall colors in Wisconsin are very hard to beat.
Oh, okay.
So we get out into nature. The hickory nut is growing in the wild, so we go into the wooded area and gather hickory nuts. And quite frequently out there you'll see wild turkeys, deer, sandhill cranes, all these nature things that we love to see.
Really?
Yeah.
So when the leaves start to change,
right,
that means you're kind of approaching hickory nut season.
Exactly. We start gathering probably in early October.
Okay.
And gather all through October into November. And then we start cracking. And they've got to be dry for 2-3 weeks after we gather before we start cracking.
Here now.
Okay. We have nuts here on the screen that I put that I'm going to crack today. These on the screen were put on there yesterday with a damp towel.
Okay.
And the reason I do that is to take on a little moisture, so when I crack the nut, it doesn't explode. It kind of cracks into halves and makes it much easier to pick out the nut meat.
Okay, so we're gonna lay the screen out, lay the nuts on top of the screen. How damp do you get that towel?
Well, I'll run it through water, and then I kind of wring it out so it's damp.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then you put that on top of them, just overnight.
Just overnight. Yeah.
Okay.
Notice I have a vise here that I use for cracking.
And this is just your standard vise.
Yeah, just not the big heavy duty. It's kind of a in between size vise.
Okay.
Then I'll take the nut. The jaws are right here. Okay, that's the way it goes in there. Then I just so it cracks a little bit. Point and the point are to the outside. the jaws hit the.
Okay.
It's time consuming, and you can. A lot of people use a ball peen hammer.
Oh
Correct.
boy.
And I think that's a little faster. But
But it is precise.
right, you know, it's hard to be cracking with a hammer consistent. So my opinion is this takes a little longer at this end. But if they're cracked proper, it's a lot easier picking out the nuts. In most cases, you get a black nut like this here. You would think it wasn't any good. But it is. You can see the nut meat right in there.
In the tub, and then you put another towel on top of it.
Yeah, we just keep a towel over them while we're working
Okay.
with them.
Okay. All right. So now, this is called what that you're doing now?
This is what I call picking out the nuts. He's cracked them, and so now, I use this hand cracker to, to crack them a little more, because sometimes they're not cracked quite enough to get the nut meat out.
And why don't you do your initial cracking with this cracker?
Because it would crack
very
them
hard.
too much.
Okay.
There is no, he has leverage with the vise that he can turn it just so far. Here, they would explode. I mean,
Okay.
they would, well, I don't know if they'd explode, but they would get mush.
Okay. We don't want mushy
No.
nuts.
And so all I use this for is just to break it open a little more,
Okay.
And I have this pick that's very sharp.
Is that a regular nut pick?
No.
The sharp instrument is a dental pick. They can be purchased at drugstores or online.
I poke myself, I oftentimes have a Band-Aid on this finger because I...
Really? So it's really sharp on the
It
end.
is really sharp on the end.
Okay.
There's some of those nuts, and the nuts that she's picking out could be off of two different trees.
Okay.
And all of a sudden she gets one of the nuts that, honest to God, she'll get 75% of what he has. And the other nut, she's lucky if she gets 1 out of 10. That's,
Really? The tree makes a difference.
it certainly does.
And how closely do you monitor, once you pick the nuts up from the ground, what tree it came from?
Yeah. I pretty well got them marked.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He has his little notes in
I
there.
got notes. There's
Well, and it's interesting because if a limb breaks off from a tree, remember that one year we didn't realize that?
not necessarily breaks completely off. Sometimes if they got more fruit on, then they can really bear.
Well, that one year we didn't realize that branch had cracked, and so we gathered all the nuts, and we couldn't understand why some, so many of the nuts off that tree, some were very good, but some weren't any good, didn't have nuts in it at all. And then we realized the next time we went that
You had lost
a
something.
branch had broken on that tree.
Okay.
And so the nuts that...
And we assumed that it broke just before they were, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before they were gonna drop.
Okay.
So the nut was in there, 90% mature, but it never finished.
Wow.
Now always make sure that the insides are white. If it, I will even break a half in two if it looks suspicious, because if they're not white, they're not good.
You've cracked the nuts. You've picked the nuts, and you've put them in the colander.
Now I'm cleaning them.
Now you're cleaning them. Okay.
And if the squirrels are lucky, they get this stuff.
Okay.
Seems like there should be a better method than this, but I haven't found one.
Yeah, it's. How important is this stage?
This is very important.
Really?
This is the stage that we get most of our compliments from, because people say, you know, I have yet to find a piece of shell in your nuts, and I can't say that, you know.
Right.
usually
So
when
this
I
is
find
really,
it.
if you want to do a good job,
This is it.
this is it.
And this is a double check too, if you should miss one that doesn't, you know, that really doesn't measure up, you know, when you're
Yes.
picking them out, you will find it in this step. Or should, anyway. Another thing we kind of watch closely for is, and I haven't seen any now, but oftentimes there'll be a little wedge in the middle here, of the nut meat, and this is when I usually will find those if they're hiding there. See, now when I talk about that wedge, these are the fun ones to do.
The halves. They're so big.
But you know, and then of course in going through these too, I find some that have little edges chipped off or whatever that you miss when you.
You ever found after all these years of collecting hickory nuts, wow, there went one.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'll get it. Have you ever found anything unusual in a nut? Are there any nuts that you and Bob go, you remember that one nut?
Well, yeah, sometimes we find 3 nuts in one.
Really?
Yeah, not very often. 2 you find quite often that have grown together.
Okay.
But our son found one that was 3, and of course he took it home. But there are different kinds of hickory nuts. Now we don't run into that because where we go, we know they're all shagbark.
Okay.
But we did have some people invite us to gather nuts one time, and we went there. That's actually when our kids were still, you know, home with us, and we brought them home and cracked them, and they weren't they didn't taste good.
Oh, wow.
So we found out that they were shellbark, and shellbark hickory. I mean, I guess they're edible, but they just really don't taste. See, now there's one. I wouldn't put that in because I don't know that there's
It's a little
anything
bit-
wrong with it, but it doesn't look nice, you know.
Right.
They're all different sizes. I mean, because they're not all off the same. I don't know, that must be one Bob did. It sure wasn't a half, unless it broke when he put it in there.
These are all deluxe
Uh-huh.
4-pound bags,
Okay.
and we sell a lot of these to Latour's restaurant.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They have a lot of demand for the halves. I guess they put them on a cookie or something.
They put them, yeah.
It's quite popular there, so we sell them probably 50 pounds of these a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when you say deluxe, you mean the halves are...
Yeah, they're all halves. There's no pieces. They're all,
okay.
I don't know if you can get a close up on them.
Sure enough.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Really nice. Everything, you put them in freezer bags. Everything you can, you do.
Everything.
Yep.
Okay.
We
Yep.
do it.
Okay.
Yeah, the gallons. I mean, the 4-pound ones are freezer. The pounders are freezers, and the half-pound are freezers. We can't get the Ziploc.
Smaller.
The snack packs in the
Okay.
freezer, but most of the time those don't get the freezer anyway.
Okay.
People
Too
eat
small
them
for
too
that.
fast. Yeah.
And you store them basically in the freezer once they're...
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And you try to keep your other food away from them while they're in the freezer.
That's-
Yeah, we
Yeah.
bring them. Yeah, when we get enough out of here, then we take what's left here and put it up in our refrigerator freezer upstairs before when we put the
Okay.
nuts in here. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, this is
Gotcha.
mainly for nuts.
Looks like hickory, right?
These are just, yeah, these are pieces.
Okay. These are molds, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shucks.
Oh, okay.
And what you do is when you're grilling, you let a handful on over your charcoal, and then they smoke up and give you the hickory flavor.
year is somebody's life a month. The university is doing some research on it.
Now, you gotta tell me now, you know, they say if hickory tree is crushed, then it's not gonna rot.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. Is it butter?
I don't know.